What up, everybody? I forgot to hit the button again.
Hi.
I tried to make it cool every time, but I probably should make that intro just a hair longer to give me time. I literally have 5 seconds to get my headphones off my microphone, push the button, and then click the stop cam button. So I mess up every time. But if you are new and you just clicked on this as a pre-recorded video, this is what you can expect. This is Recovering Addict. We talk about recovery. We focus on recovery. This is all about recovery, the education of recovery and how to improve your recovery. Because once you finish a 12-step program, maybe once you get out of an IOP program, you have to continue in your recovery because it's an uphill battle the rest of your life. And we learned from this book we're going through. We're on chapter 8 now of Sober Living by Terrence Gorski, that the recovery road is like walking up a down escalator. And as soon as you stop making progress up, you are on your way down. And right in that area of when you stop is when relapse happens. When you hit the bottom, that's when you start using drugs or alcohol. So we're trying to learn warning signs that affect us when we are in this upward momentum and stop us through our character defects, stress, change, and how to handle all these types of situations. So we go through news, we read a bunch of 12-step literature, we have people come on and talk and all that kind of good stuff. So we got 15 minutes. Now my sponsor, the guy that I asked to be my sponsor, is going to come. He's going to give his speech about his battle with addiction, about his recovery, about what he does to do service work, and all the stuff we need to hear because, like Steve said, sometimes it's your turn to talk and sometimes it's your turn to listen. And it's my turn to listen and to hear stuff that I need to hear. And we will get into that. And once Erin signs on here, we got something special for her too.
Yes, we do, Miss Erin.
Those comments are flying. I can't even keep up.
I don't know.
How is everybody? Well, that's one of them. I'll look in a second. Yeah, it started in there.
Okay.
Let me say hi to everybody real quick. We got Merk in the house. Polly, what's up, brother? Sorry I didn't call you back. We got busy and blah, blah, blah. Hey, Don, how are you doing? Right on.
Hi, Don.
Don's in here. Cobra 7, that's a cool name.
That is a cool name.
Murd, Jeffrey, welcome. Cody, what's going on? Bob Smith, welcome back. Love seeing you in here. Sue, that's a new face. Hi, Sue. Welcome. That's what happened to you. You stopped going up the down escalator and ended up at the bottom relapsing. Not a good thing. But you're in the right place because we learn all this together. I do it because I need it or I'm going to fail. And if I fail, then I'm going to ruin what I was already on the way to doing, ruining my family, my wife, my kids, my job, all that stuff. So 2 times in my life, addiction has taken me to the bottom. One time in the early 2000s, I was a meth addict tweaker, committed a second-degree felony. I ended up in local county jail for about a year, and then I was in a halfway house for 4 months, and then I got out and I was on probation for 2 months. And I was clean during that time, of course. The nudge by the judge and drug tests will do that to you. But as soon as I got off probation, I started smoking weed again. And I smoked weed all the way until I needed to get a job that required drug tests. So once it required drug tests, I stayed sober. And then I got really into exercising and fitness. And I stayed sober for about 5 years up until I was about 33. Then I started drinking casually. And I had no idea that I was an addict or that my mind was an addict thinking mind. And every decision that I had made in my life up to that point was through the addict thinking. And of course, that led me to binge drinking all the way up into my 40s. The last 3 years of my drinking was a pint or more a night. And the last year and a half, 2 years of my drinking was close to a fifth a night, gallons on the weekend. I ended up having to go to a detox center to detox, went to an IOP for 5 months. And then I transitioned out of there in February and decided, let's do something that you haven't done. And that's give back to this world because I was a selfish addict all the way up through my 40s. So it's my turn to return the favor to the world that let me live and breathe on it and try to be a positive. I want to rewrite my obituary in the last half of my life so that when I rewrite this obituary, that it says something positive about me when I leave. I want to leave a legacy on this earth. And that legacy is not going to be a drug addict who had a horrible, neglectful way with his wife and kids and, the whole spiel. I don't want to be that no more. And so we learn and practice and practice and practice. We have a Facebook page you can join if you want to. And it's a private group. We go in there and we strengthen each other. And that's what we do. We're building a community here to help strengthen one another through recovery, people we can rely and lean on. Just like this morning, I had a little anxiety. I reached out to Lisa. she gave me some strength and hope, some Merc and all them in the comments. And hey, this is what I did to avoid that. And we lean on each other. And that's exactly what we do. We can look at Felice and I as a bridge to help people find other strong people in recovery, especially in this time with we're all on the lockdown, coronavirus this, coronavirus that. It's a time where we can practice the tools that we've learned and say, hey, we made it through the coronavirus and we're sober and clean. And we have the tools to do that. We can actually reach out to the normies and teach them the tools that we've learned. You know what I mean? And if we've already been through the stuff we have, we're going to get through this too. But here we can do it together. And I'm really happy about that.
Cobra 7, Dale's brother-in-law. You got a cool name, Cobra. And I'm glad you checked in, Betsy. Glad you're sober today. Enjoy the movie with your kids.
Yes, Tracy. A legacy of love and hope and recovery. Amen. Where's Erin? Erin, you in the house? Yep, there she is. All right, Erin. So what we do is Fleece collects all the birthdays. If you guys throw a birthday, your sobriety birthday, not your belly button birthday, you throw your sobriety birthday. What?
Nothing.
You never heard belly button birthday?
Nope.
Oh.
Now I have.
All right, then. So if you throw your sobriety birthday in the comments, Fleece actually now has transferred those onto an Excel spreadsheet so we don't miss one. We missed Erin's, and hers was actually yesterday. But we figured out how to use the system a little better, too. And so I want to play what we made special.
I do believe Miss Shoop has a birthday coming up.
Oh, yeah, Miss Shoop, you are close to one. All right, so Erin, this is for you. Let me get this going here, okay?
I've been dreaming so much lately about your face when you're smiling. It's the only thing that saves me. Hey, I don't know if I told you.
You know what that view has in common there?
What?
It's beautiful. Erin, thank you so much for reaching out and helping people who are hurting inside. It's so appreciated.
Yes, thank you for being a part of our community, and we see that beautiful heart of yours every day.
Thank you for always showing up to our videos.
Amen. Right on, Erin. We love you.
Love you, Aaron. Love you. Congratulations. 1, 2, 3. Good job, Aaron.
Yeah, 3 years sober.
Woo! So proud of you.
Congratulations to you, Miss Erin. I'm so excited to hear 3 years in sober. You got this. Keep leading by example. I cannot wait to see your number 4. I know you got it in you. Keep up the good work, lady.
I don't want to be without you. This is something.
Oh, congrats, Aaron, now.
Congratulations. Man, I really hope it was 3 years because I almost reached out to you to double check because I would hate to make that video and then it be wrong. I would feel so horrible. But let's get into this. This is 24 hours a day. It's April 11th. Here's the AA thought of the day. In the alcoholic world, one drink always leads to another. And you can't stop until you're paralyzed. And the next morning it begins all over again. You eventually land in a hospital or jail. You lose your job. Your home is broken up. You're always in a mess. You're on the merry-go-round and you can't get off. You're a squirrel in a cage and you can't get out. Am I convinced that alcoholic world is not a pleasant place for me to live? Are you convinced that the alcoholic world or the drug world is not a pleasant place for you to live? Meditation of the day. I must learn to accept self-discipline. I must try never to yield 1 point that I have already won. I must not let myself go in resentment, hate, fears, pride, lust, or gossip. Even if the discipline keeps me separated from some people who are without discipline, nevertheless, I will carry on. I may have different ways and different standard of living than some others. I may be moved to act by different motives than some people. But I will try to live the way I believe God wants me to live, no matter what others say. Amen. And the prayer of the day is, I pray that I may be an example to others of a better way of living. I pray that I may carry on in spite of hindrance. Carry on in spite of hindrance, man. That's us right now in this coronavirus. Like I like to say. Every time my kids go to touch something, I yell that. What?
Oh, nothing.
Did you like that, Aaron? I hope so.
Yeah, she said 3 years. I'm crying. So sweet.
All right, Aaron. We had fun making that.
Yeah,
And
that was
Cassie,
fun.
I was like, Cassie, you got to send me something for Aaron. And boom, there it was. There it was.
Polly thinks our mountains are fake.
Polly. You never even seen a mountain in real
He
life. What
said
do you
that
know?
is a fake mountain. Ain't no way that's real. I ain't never seen a mountain like that before.
Really? I think we were on the,
Philadelphia is concrete buildings.
yeah, well, you need to come out here to Utah
Yes.
there, Polly.
So you can see some mountains
Yeah.
because they ain't mountains.
Hey, Corey, welcome back. Good to see you. Good to see you. Betsy, how you doing? Is that everybody? Can we say hi to everybody? Oh, there's my mommy.
Hi, Grandma.
Hi, Mom. Oh, look, there's Chad Lindell. What up, Chad? Welcome to the show. Yeah. Chad, we do that. So if you want to give us your birthday, we'll throw it down and you make sure you're around. And we try to, since you can't go in person and actually get a tag like we got going on here, you know how we usually do, we make little special videos and we try to give back. And now I've learned how to do that screen share with audio. I'm not limited to, 30 seconds and 30 megabytes. So I can actually take my good camera, make a real video, 5, 10, 20-minute video and play it for y'all. And so Gina, if she's in here, I can play your video now. I figured out how to do it. There she is. I figured out how to play videos, Gina. So tomorrow we have a guest speaker today here in just a couple minutes. My sponsor, really great guy. And we'll play your video tomorrow for sure. So do you guys remember a couple days ago we talked about the importance of a sponsor? Somebody had asked the night before, what do you want a sponsor for? What is a sponsor for? And we figured out that a sponsor is a rewarding relationship in recovery. And you usually want to find somebody that has a year or more and has worked the 12 steps, who has some sobriety under their belt, who has come through challenges and actually is given in service. Look for somebody that has what you want in sobriety and learn from them and how to get it. And so we learned that it's a rewarding relationship. And we learned that the role of a sponsor is a good source of information. A good sponsor can provide valuable insight about experiences with life without drugs or alcohol. A sponsor can provide motivation, encouragement that an individual may need to work the 12 steps, because the 12 steps are hard. We took everything seriously in our addiction. We overdo everything we do in our lives until it comes to them 12 steps. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden it's hard. And it's hard because you have to take a deep look inside yourself to work the 12 steps. Just like it says in How It Works, you have to be completely honest. And if you're around when we read that poem, The Man in the Mirror, that's the guy you got to talk to, the girl you got to talk to. You got to look in the mirror and be honest with that person right there. Brutally blunt, honest. And until you can reach that brutal, blunt honesty, recovery is going to just forever be out of grasp. I wrote down some reasons that I chose Dell as a sponsor. I was looking around. You look around, you're looking at people in recovery and you're like, oh, the sponsor thing, huh? What sponsor should I choose? So you go to a bunch of NA meetings, a bunch of AA meetings. You've been to a couple speaker meetings and you start looking at people. Would that guy be a good sponsor for me? What kind of personality am I looking for? You know, and it's almost awkward when you go to ask a sponsor to be your sponsor. You feel like you're asking somebody on a date when you were 15 again. You got to get over that. You just get over that and you go and you pursue, you ask. And I wrote down a little list real quick of the reasons that I went up and asked Dell if he would be my sponsor. And I looked at the amount of sobriety he had under his belt, and he's got a good amount of sobriety. So that in my mind told me that he's been around the block a time or two and has had the challenges of relapse possibility, or maybe he did, he's had to fight through that to get that much sobriety. I noticed that he does speaker meetings. I noticed that he does service work, that he's actively engaged in recovery. I noticed he has what I want, and I want him to teach me how to get what he has. I see that he's very full of compassion and very family oriented. And that hit home with me as we started this channel out to be family recovery. He's very sincere when he talks to you. I've seen him interact with other people in recovery. Very sincere. When you got his attention, you have his full attention, and he's going to do whatever it takes to help you. I want to serve. I want to learn how to serve the way that he serves in service. And I feel that he can guide me in my sobriety, and on all else, with the knucklehead like me, he's going to tell me what I need to hear, even if it hurts. And we all need that. So I needed somebody to be blunt with me, and I feel that Dell is somebody that can do that. So I'm going to bring Dell up on the screen. I want everybody to give him a big old what's up. He's going to speak. He's going to tell us his story. He's going to tell us his recovery. And then he's very encouraging about questions. So if you guys have any questions, throw them in the comments. I will put them up on the screen, and I'm sure he would be happy to ask. Without any further ado, here is what up, Dale? Oh, let me get my headphones on.
Jesus, we forget every
I always
time.
forget to put my headphones on.
Hey,
Okay.
guys.
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hi, Dave.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Well, we're here.
Is
What's
the-
going on?
Is the lighting okay?
You look great, man.
Okay. Hey, so gosh, let me first start by saying it's an honor to be on the show. And I think I've known LT for a little while now, and it's an honor to be on your show, LT, as well as your wife's show and your son Link. I really have pondered the things that I wanted to say for the time that I'm having to be on this show. And so I want to start from the beginning and maybe, get to a point where there are some questions that are asked. But so growing up as a little boy, I grew up in West Valley, and I grew up in kind of a big family, 5 sisters and a brother, a mom. My stepdad passed away when I was in the 4th grade. He was in a severe accident at Kennecott mine. And so there was a lot of abuse growing up in my family. There was a lot of just alcoholism, drug addict, some other abuse going on. And so as a young boy, I learned that I needed to find some type of a closure to get that little boy out of what was the hell that I was living in. I witnessed a lot of abuse growing up. I witnessed my mother being, raped by my stepdad, my sisters being abused. My older brother was a drug addict, alcoholic, and he would get really drunk and he would bust the windows in the house multiple times a year. He would be being chased by the cops, and there was just a bunch of chaos. And so I was also bullied in school tons. And so as that little boy was going through those things, I learned that there had to be something that I could go to. And so there was a time when my family, when we went on it wasn't a vacation, but we went to stay with some other family members. And during this time, I was abused during that time. I think we were there a week. And so I was abused during that time. And I knew that my family members knew this. And so the next day, I looked at my mother, I looked at my siblings, and I looked at those that knew that this happened to me. And I would look at them and I would question, why are you not going to ask me if I'm okay? Why are you not going to hold me and embrace me and ask me if I need to talk? And so they never did. And I think I was probably maybe 6 years old, 7 years old at this time. And it really affected me. It really affected that little boy. And so as that time away from our home ended and we got in the car and drove back to our own home, I realized that this was not going to go away from me. I needed to find some type of a closure. And so early on in my younger years as a little boy, 7-8-year-old little boy, I turned to the drugs and alcohol. I overdosed on heroin at 12 years old. I was involved with my older sisters and my brother smoking pot and drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes. And in the 5th grade, I remember my mother checking me out of school to come home and share my cigarettes with her. They were Marlboro 100s, the tall ones, not the box, the flip top box. So they were just Marlboro 100s. I remember coming home specifically and sharing my cigarettes with my mother in the 5th grade. And so, I learned a lot of ways to build that bridge of what sometimes life brings to us. And so, like I was saying, I overdosed on heroin at 12 years old. I was arrested at 12 years old, put in the back of a cop car at 12 years old. I went to DT young. And so growing up for me, I always promised that little boy that I was not going to treat my family the way that I was treated as a little boy. I promised that little boy that I was not going to do those things. And so growing up, teenage years, adolescence, junior high, high school, of course, I went to a lot of parties, did a lot of things, and met my wife in the 10th grade. And, you know, we started our family super young. And so here I was faced with living up to that promise. Now I'm starting a family and I'm needing to live up to that promise. Of course I didn't. I fell short of that by a long shot. And so my wife and I, we had a lot of hard times in the beginning. And I really want to emphasize I'm cutting a lot out of Dale's past and Dale's childhood, and I apologize for doing that. Maybe another time I can be back on the show and address some of the other things that I experienced and went through. But I wanted to jump up to the adult Dale and be able to connect with you guys mostly for this time that I have. And so, as I was saying, my wife and I got married. We had our first son, Randy, and I didn't change. I continued doing those things. And as I did those things, my wife and I, our relationship just kind of, you know, we kind of started to separate. And so we broke up a few times and just things weren't good. And so jumping way ahead, now, 1999, I got my job at Hill Air Force Base, and I had a lot of near times of losing my job. I was driven home numerous times of being drunk or high at work, and my flight chief taking me home or telling my coworkers to take me home. My wife and kids were just they're just done. You know, that our families get to the point where they're done with us. You know, I remember months back, LT and I talking in my office, and the subject came up. I don't know if you remember, LT. The subject came up about us getting to our bottoms. And we talked about that, LT and I did. And sometimes, guys and gals out there listening, it doesn't need to be us that gets to our bottom before we get help. Sometimes our families get to their bottom, and we need to respect that and understand that the world sometimes tells us you're not going to change unless you get to your bottom, or he or her is not going to change till they get to their bottom. Well, that might be the case for some people, but our families, they get to their bottoms probably a lot quicker than I did. And so anyway, jumping ahead quite a bit, my mother passed away in 2006, end of February. And my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, passed away 9 days after mine did. And then I think about a month after that, my wife and 4 kids found me in my wife's lap, overdosed. My wife threw me on the floor and she gave me CPR while our 4 kids watched, our youngest being 4 years old at the time, and our oldest being 16. So our 4 kids watched my wife save my life, gave me CPR, had a pretty significant near-death experience that I've questioned and thought about for almost 14 years. June 9th will be 14 years that I went into the rehab center. But anyway, guys, so after my wife saved my life, I went to the hospital for a few days and then came back and continued doing drugs and alcohol, continued that lifestyle. And then I think it was about 3 weeks, a month after going into the rehab center that my wife and my kids were finally just done with me, and they were done. So my wife told me on June 9th, 2006, you need to go into a rehab center and at least be evaluated, at least be looked at, because if you don't choose to do this, you can pack up whatever things you choose or think that you need and go stay with whatever drug addict, alcoholic you want to. So, you know, those character defects kicked in, and that pride and the addict just puffed up and said, you know what, we got this. Just pack your stuff and go with your wife. We can show that we're fine. So I went with my wife to the rehab center, ACT in Ogden, and they questioned me and they questioned me and they questioned me, and then they asked me if they could take my blood. And when they asked me if they could take my blood, the addict that resides within us, he said to me, he says, Dale, shut your mouth. Get out of here. Get us out of this situation. We cannot let them take our blood. And that's what it was. It was a we thing and it was an our thing. We can't let them take our blood. And that addict that resides within us, guys, it's a love-hate relationship, isn't it? Sometimes we hate leaving it and we miss it. And that's the part of us that's going to be with us for the rest of our lives. But nonetheless, so they ended up taking my blood. And so when they finished taking my blood and got the results back, they came into the room and they talked with my wife and I, and they frankly just looked at me and said, wow, Dale, we don't even know how you're breathing on your own. How are you? Have you wet your pants? Because how are you controlling your faculties? You got so much drugs in your system. So anyway, guys, moving ahead, you know, again, I was in the rehab center for a month, but I learned a lot about Dale. Let me talk to you about that for a bit. So 3 days of being detoxed in the rehab center. I was in a little confined room for 3 days. And the first day of going in that room, I hated looking at myself in the mirror. I'm sure you guys can relate. Don't we hate looking at ourselves in the mirror when we're in the midst of our addiction and in the midst of acting out? We hate ourselves, right? Yeah. So I was in this little makeshift, in this room with a makeshift mirror on the wall. And I'd go to that mirror and I hated looking at that man, that father, that husband, that provider, that member of society. And that disciple to Christ. I'm a religious guy and I had been living a complete facade. And so at the end of the first day, I could somewhat like to look in the mirror in this little room being detoxed. The beginning of the second day, I kind of liked looking in the mirror. I would purposely go to the mirror and look at myself. And I remember, guys, I would actually touch my face and I would think, wow, I kind of, that guy's looking kind of familiar, kind of resembles who that guy is. And anyway, the beginning of the third day, I purposely went to the mirror and I smiled at myself and I started to love that man, that father, and I knew myself and it was a good thing. And then at the end of the third day, they came to get me out of detox. And so the lady came and opened up the door and she says, you're good to go. You can come out and join the rest of the clients, the rest of the addicts in the center. And so as I packed up this little makeshift bag that I had, I remember standing at the threshold of that door and the lady said, come on, let's go. And I remember asking her, can I go back in this room for just a few minutes? And she said, well, why do you want to go back in there? Are you on drugs? Nobody wants to go in that room. Why do you want to go in there? And I said, I just do. So she let me and I went back in the room and something magical happened. And as I share the last end of this with you guys, I truly want you to know that the magical thing that happened with you, I believe everybody has the potential for this to happen to them. And if it does, it can catapult you into areas of recovery that are so special and are enough for us to say, not today. I went back in the room. I looked in the mirror and I started to cry. I was making a connection with that man, that father, that husband, that provider, that member of society individual. And guys, something magical happened. So as I'm looking in the mirror, instead of being flat on the wall, it kind of went down like this. And if you could imagine looking in a mirror with it kind of down like this, you see the floor behind you. And this was in my heart and in my mind, but it was beautiful and magical. So I'm looking in the mirror, and on the floor behind me, I saw myself as a little boy. I saw that 7-year-old boy in a fetal position on the ground crying, looking up at me. And as I'm looking in the mirror, looking at this little boy, he said to me, if you turn around and pick me up, I will walk this walk of recovery with you. And together, we will do this. And so I did. In my heart, in my mind, I turned around and I picked up that little boy and I held him and I embraced him. And in my ear, that little boy said to me, he said, I've been looking in your direction this whole time, all these years, having hope and praying and wishing that one day on your road of destruction, you would turn around and be brave enough and have enough strength to sift through all the crap, all the hurt, all the destruction, and see me on the ground and choosing to come back and get me. Now let's beat this. And when I say beat this, I don't know, do we ever beat addiction? I think we just keep it at bay because it's always there, right? Yep. So today, this day, I was so privileged to wake up with that little boy. And every single day from that day, almost 14 years ago, that little boy pulls on my shirt in the back and he gets my attention. And as I look over my shoulder, he's there. And he's always pointing his finger up at me and he's doing this. He's saying, Dale, are you being kind to people? Are you saying hi to people? Are you helping people? Are you spreading goodwill? Are you doing those things that you know help people? Because you and I both know the world is a sad place. And so I'm sorry for stringing that out. Again, I left out a huge percentage of Dale's life up till now. But I guess I'll end with that. And if you guys have some questions, love questions. And so
I'm gonna have to stop you though, because I remember the first time that Kathy came in when you were speaking and said, "Stop being humble and let them know what you've done in recovery here for Utah." It's truly inspirational.
Okay, thanks, LT. I will do that. I'll spend a few minutes doing that. So let's see. Gosh.
Well, you only been talking 15, so we got all night.
Okay, great. This is awesome. This is great. Guys, sorry I keep looking out. I don't know if you can see my eyes looking out. I have this window open in this trailer, this camping trailer, and maybe I should close these blinds, but I feel like people are walking by looking at me, talking to this computer. Anyway, so coming out of the rehab center 14 years ago and going back to Hill Air Force Base, going back to work, my crew, my flight that I worked on at the time, I worked in a metrology lab, and at the time I went into the rehab center, none of my coworkers liked me. Every single one of them hated me. They didn't want me there. It wasn't a good place. And so going back to work after leaving the rehab center, I went into my supervisor's office. Bill was his name, and I had my certificate of completion of the rehab center because I needed that to keep my job. So I gave it to Bill, and Bill took it, and he looked up at me from his desk, and he said, "Okay, fine, this is good. I'm happy for you. Get your A out there and get to work." And I kind of leaned over his desk, and I said, "Bill, I don't know if you know this, but those people out there, they kind of hate me. They don't like me. If you have any respect for me, can you put me in another flight or another building or another area of the base in a metrology lab?" And Bill said something to me that was pretty profound. Bill looked at me and he says, "Dale," he says, "you know what? I love you enough that I'm not going to take those pages out of your book. I'm not going to do that." And I said, "Well, Bill, what the heck are you talking about? My book and these pages and all this stuff?" And he says, "Dale, one day you'll know, but he gave me 4 work orders for some aileron, little hydraulic motors off of the B-1 bomber or something, and I was to go calibrate those." And so anyway, I went and I left his office, and I walked through this corridor of my coworkers that frankly hated me. I know they did. They despised me because of the slug I had become. So anyway, I went through this corridor of these co-workers' desks, and then I got to my desk, and I loaded up my green canvas bag with tools, and I went over and I calibrated these 4, I think they were 4 pressure gauges, actually. And so going back to work, and after that incident, I got to my desk, and I prayed, and I talked to the Lord, and I said, "God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm freshly out of rehab, and I already want to use super bad." And I really felt, Christ asking me, maybe trying to convince me that a great tool that I was going to use, a great tool that was available for me to put in my artillery bag, that I have imaginary bag on the side of me that I put things in. And I sometimes look down and I pull out something out of that artillery bag to get me past the time when I want to relapse. And so anyway, I felt inspired by the Lord that I needed to start speaking, to start, spreading goodwill and telling my story. And so I think it was probably maybe 3 or 4 months after coming out of the rehab center, I walked over to our director's office, director over the 309th Squadron for PMEL. He didn't know me, at least I didn't think he did. So I went over to his office, I knocked on his door, and his secretary asked me what I was doing, and I was kind of in an area that maybe I shouldn't have been in. I didn't know. So I told her, I said, "Well, my name's Dale, and I just got out of rehab, and I want to speak at the base." And she kind of laughed and kind of chuckled and thought, "Wait, what? You want to do what? Where'd you come from?" And so anyway, I found myself sitting in front of the director's office. Rick Buell was his name. And I go in his big office with cherry wood, oak wood, whatever it was, this big office. Anyway, I'm sitting in his office, and Rick was talking to me, and I said, "Well, my name's Dale Covington, and I want to speak at the base about addiction." And he says, "Well, let me get this straight. You're an addict, and you want to speak and tell your story. Why would you want to do that?" And I told him why, and then he said to me, he looks at me, and he goes, "You know what? Your name sounds familiar. Why does your name sound familiar?" And I said to him, I don't know. Why does it? And then he started to go through some papers on his desk, and then he pulls a paper out. And he says, "This is why. Because just over a month ago, I was given the opportunity to either fire you or give you a chance to go through rehab. You did go through rehab, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. And I came back and I completed." So anyway, guys, Rick Buell pushed a button on his phone to talk to the secretary out, the lady that I talked to first out before his office. And so she gets on his intercom phone on his desk, and he says to her, he says, "My director's call is coming up, and do I have a couple minutes?" And she says, "Yeah, you do." And then he looks at me as he's trying to block the speaker on the phone. He says, "How much time do you need?" And I said, "Gosh, I don't know. This will be my first time doing this." And he says, 12 minutes. And I said, "Yeah, 12 minutes is fine." So anyway, guys, he gave me 12 minutes. I spoke at our director's call, 2006, July, maybe. Yeah, end of July. Anyway, no, it was a few months after that. But anyway, my wife and my kids came to that. I spoke at the theater on bass the very first time. And from that, I've done just a lot of speaking for my church. So moving up to the stuff LT wants me to talk about is the state of Utah. On the political side of the state of Utah, there's a guy, his name's Randy Parker, and he was appointed by the Trump administration to be Utah's director over Utah's opioid epidemic. I don't know if you guys remember, but when President Trump was debating back way before he became president, he promised Americans, all of us, he said, "If you guys select me to be your president, I will put a director in every state to work on that state's opioid epidemic." And so he did that, and Randy Parker was ours. And so Randy Parker had his secretary get a hold of me through my email, addictionrecoveryspeaker@gmail.com. And so she got a hold of me. I emailed her back, and she asked if I would brief the director for the state of Utah. I thought it was a joke, and so I kind of went along with it in the email, and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll speak to this Randy Parker," thinking it was kind of a joke. And so she emailed me back, and I went up to brief Randy Parker in his office at the federal building in Utah. And it was a big office with a big table with this big microphone looking thing, 2 microphones in the table, and it was teleconferenced, whatever, to 6 other locations. And so Randy Parker and a bunch of other people asked me a lot of questions. And so that was probably about an hour and a half. And then after that meeting, we left, and or it was done. Randy Parker shook my hand and talked to me a little while after. And he asked me if I would be interested in briefing 2 members of President Trump's cabinet, which at the time it was Jim Corral, which Jim Corral is the United States drug czar for President Trump. And then Ann Haslet also is in that same part of the government for President Trump. So anyway, they were both flying here to Utah, I think a month after I briefed Randy Parker. And Randy Parker asked me if I would be willing to brief Jim Corral and Ann Haslet, which, man, I was so humbled. I was like shocked. I was like, heck yeah. And so anyway, Washington selected me out of a group of, I don't know, Randy said there was maybe 15 or 20 other individuals at that time that they had been putting together a package on all these people, and even me, and I had no idea they were doing this. They'd been watching me and just paying attention to what I've been doing. I guess that's just our government. They can do those things. Anyway, so
yeah.
the Washington selected me to do that. So anyway, I did that. And then our Governor Herbert selected me in 2017 to be Utah's ambassador. So I got to represent Utah as Utah's ambassador and speak on the news numerous times, speak at the Capitol numerous times. And so I've just done a lot of that stuff on the political side, which gave me opportunities to I had an opportunity to go to Washington, and I turned it down because of a previous engagement to speak in St. George here in Utah. And so with what I've said, it's interesting how the Lord has ways of bringing our spouses in with this. And LT, for your spouse to be with you is beautiful. And frankly, it is beautiful. And my wife has spoken with me at the Capitol. She's been with me numerous times in the state of Utah to speak. And her and I team up and do family interventions. We've done numerous family interventions. And so, you know what? I think it's so cool that that we have these opportunities, LT and your wife, to speak with our wife and to be with our wife, and for you to be sitting right there with your wife. And I bet you that you could lean over and hug your wife right now and she wouldn't push you away. And in the midst of our addictions, right, our wives didn't want us around, but that has to be earned. We've got to earn that back. And I remember my wife saying to me, she says, you know what, Dale, I'm done with the lip service. What I need from you is action. If you have really changed, show me and the kids by your actions. I don't need to hear what you did yesterday. I don't need to hear how your group went last night. I don't need to hear what your thoughts are. I don't need to know what your feelings are with your addiction. I need to see action. And so, anyway, sorry, LT, I kind of spun that way out and left the field.
I love it. That's awesome. You guys got any questions for Dale? So, when you were speaking, I remember one time one thing you were talking about is when they set up your nameplate. That stands out to me. You're at this huge conference at Washington or the Capitol or one of the two, and they have your name. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain that story? That story always just has stuck with me.
Yeah. So at the, I had to go through a security check at the Capitol. Jim Corral and Ann Hazlett and our DEA director, Brian Besser, Sean Reyes was there. Our Utah State Attorney General was there. Matter of fact, he was on the left side of me. But anyway, so I get to this room, and there was a bunch of these nameplates around, and mine was right there, Dale Covington. I had a little water bottle next to my name and a microphone. And so as I came in that room and saw my spot, I saw Dale Covington. I felt Christ. I felt the Holy Ghost. I felt Heavenly Father maybe suggesting to me or asking me, hey, Dale, maybe you should have them, or maybe you could have them change that nameplate. And I looked at the nameplate and I thought, well, why? It says my name. Yeah, it does. Maybe you could have them change it, though. And I'm questioning the Spirit, and I'm questioning, well, what would you have me change it to, Lord? And as this is going on, the answer came to me, and it was, well, what are you, Dale? I felt Christ asking me. Well, I'm Christ. I'm a husband. I'm a father, and I named some things, and well, but it's deeper than that. And I realized, I'm a drug addict, alcoholic in recovery. And I was proud of it. I was proud of who I was. The world would say, what's a drug addict? Always a drug addict. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Just leave them to the curb, push them back under the viaduct. And Christ doesn't work that way. So I am a drug addict, alcoholic. So I took my nameplate, and I walked me and the nameplate over to the lady that was running the show. And I said, ma'am, can you do me a favor? And she looks at me and says, well, yeah, what is it? And I gave her the nameplate, and I said, could you change this for me? And she looks at it, and she takes it and looks at it. She says, well, is there a problem? Is this your name? And I said, yeah, that's my name. It's correct. But can you put on there Dale Covington, drug addict, alcoholic? And she kind of leans in and says, you know there's going to be a lot of people here. You really want me to put that on there? And before I could answer, I kind of felt Christ say, yeah, tell her you're sure. It was those two things that caused me to partake of Christ's atonement, because I had become a drug addict, alcoholic. And it's because of his atonement as to why I'm here today. So am I shameful for that? No. Is Christ? No. And should the world be? No, but a lot of the world is. Yep. And what builds character for us is to not give in to what the world would have us do. We need to be men of honor, women of honor. We need to stand for that. And so that's that story that LT's talking about. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Diana remembers it. She says, I remember hearing your story at Action. Me and Diana were sitting there. The whole family, my wife, the whole family was there. It stuck with her. Now we got some questions loaded up. Here's one from Jeffrey.
How did you deal with your mother dying on a day at a time? I really related to that. I need suggestions because I have been having a rough time with the death part of her. Gosh, there is a lot of things that I went through as a young boy that my mom was a part of that I never got validation for. And so when my mom passed away, I was in the midst of my addiction, I didn't much give 2 bags of crap if she passed away, to be frank. I mean, I didn't. I missed her. I loved her. But my main focus was my drugs and slash alcohol when I didn't have the drugs. But how I dealt with it, I didn't deal with it. I didn't start to deal with it until I started to gain some sobriety and some recovery. And I started to learn that through Christ, I could get past some things. And I came to so much closure with my mom passing away. And in answering your question, I'm not sure if you went through things with your mom or anything like that, or if she caused any hate for you or discontent for you. But whatever issues that you had with your mom or that you're currently having with your mom, I promise you and I guarantee you that through Christ, all of it can be okay. It may not all go away, because that's not really the intent of us gaining strength, is for things to go away. It's to understand them and learn from them and gain strength from them. So I promise you that as you continue in your sobriety and your recovery, that through your higher power, and you guys keep hearing me talk about Christ and God and the Holy Ghost, stuff like that, because that's my higher power. But I'm not here to try to tell you what yours is. But in answering your question, through your higher power, I promise you can gain closure, and Christ and Heavenly Father is how I got past that. And today, I know that my mother is okay. I know that she's happy. I know she's content, and I know that she's living on, and I know I'll see her again. Thanks for the question. I hope I answered it in a way that is helpful for you.
Here's another one from Bob.
What did you experience? Like what?
It says the NDE. I don't know what that is.
Near-death experience. Oh, I don't want to go into too much detail to answer your question, but I can say this. I can say that in that near-death experience, I was given specific information on my ability to exercise my agency, so our ability to choose. I was giving information that Dale's ability to choose can 100% get in the way of the Lord's will for me. And that's probably the greatest, most, awesome thing that I learned from that. And today, as I'm speaking with you guys, I know that Dale's agency, my ability to choose, can get in the way of my wife's hopes for me, my kids, my grandkids, and all of that. So the near-death experience, maybe if you want to call me or email me, I can tell you more personally through email, which you can do that, addictionrecoveryspeaker@gmail.com. But that's probably all I'll say about that right now. I apologize. Sorry.
Addiction recovery. I'll type that up and I'll put it on the thing. ADDICT. Addiction recovery.
addictionrecoveryspeaker@gmail.com.
Okay, I'll put that up on the screen so everybody can see it. So this is his email if you do want to reach out. Did I spell all that right? addictionrecoveryspeaker@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so I'll pop that up and on in between the comments. Cody W. has a question as well. He says, whenever you spoke for the first time, did you plan out a speech or did you just start telling your story, and how did it go?
So you heard me tell the story of the first time I spoke, and I did write that. I had probably five pieces of paper that I had ready to speak on. And as I got up to the microphone stand at the theater at Hill Air Force Base to speak, I was at the stand, and I had the papers in front of me, and I read probably 3/4 of the very first paper, and I kept feeling this prompting to get away from the stand, to leave the papers and get away. And so in answering your question, that's exactly what I did. The very first time I spoke, I had probably 5 pieces of paper to read off of, and I read probably 3/4 of the first one. And then I listened to these inner promptings. I walked away from the pulpit. I took the microphone with me. I left the papers, and I continued to speak for the time that I was allotted, but it all came from my heart. And in 14 years, I don't think that I would be exaggerating if I said that I've spoken probably at least 250 times, 225 times. And that was the only time that I spoke from 3/4 of one piece of paper. Every other time I just pray a lot. Sometimes I fast a lot before I go speak. And then maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes of me speaking, I really feel this change come over me, and the Lord speaks through me or something. He gives the information that he wants those to hear. But so anyway, at the theater that day, when I walked away and it ended and my wife came up and hugged me, and, you know, my kids hugged me, and then they had to leave, of course, to go home. My wife said to me in my ear, she said, you know what? When you were reading off of those papers, it really wasn't profound. But when you walked away from the papers and left that stand and walked away, that's when something magical happened. So, and it's not like that for everybody, but for me, somehow the Lord blesses me with the ability to do that. And the times that I'm letting some character defects kind of be on the forefront of my mind and kind of dictate some choices, that ability to do that is not so much there, because I think that with all of the ability and the knowledge and the understanding that the Lord gives us, our actions and our thoughts and our deeds needs to run parallel with that knowledge, or else, you know, we're going to feel that. And I feel that sometimes when I speak, if I'm not up to par with that. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
Oh, that was good. Oh, I'm echoing again. I don't know why. I tried to fix all the audio, but oh well. Just got to deal with it, everybody. Wonder why it is doing that. All right, if I move over here. Is that better? Nope.
Sounds fine.
Sounds fine on your end?
Yeah,
I can hear it echoing in mine, and I know they can hear it too. But that was the last question that I've seen. But I'll wait for a minute. It takes a few seconds for it to come through. Oh, there we go. I think we caught up now. Okay, my echo's gone. I can hear you better now.
Awesome.
But, Cody says, no, thank you, and thank you for speaking with us tonight. Desktop audio setting.
You bet.
Yeah, I don't know, James. This guy right here, Sober James, Dale.
Yeah.
He goes on. Me and him have teamed up, and there's a third one, Nicole. She was in the chat earlier too, but we go on. Nicole goes on at 6. Sober James goes on at 7, and then I go on at 8. So we've got this triangle of recovery at all 3 hours every night of the week during this COVID craziness. So you can tune in 3 perspectives, 3 experiences, 3 different personalities, and it's been pretty cool.
That's really neat.
Oh, Chad has something. Hey, man, who cut your hair? do you know Chad?
Chad's my nephew. So Chad, you know what? You opened up a can of worms, bro. Okay, so Chad's my nephew, and you all know Chad's story, but yeah. Chad's a beacon for the betterment of mankind. Chad, you're awesome, man. I remember those years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, which I know I am. 4 or 5 years ago, you came to live with us. My wife and I went to visit you at a mental hospital in Salt Lake City, LDS hospital, I think. And while my wife and I are visiting Chad, we felt inspired to invite him to come and live with us when he left the mental hospital, and so he did. And my wife and I, we got to witness Chad. We got to witness Chad go through some things. He persevered, and he stayed true to what he knew the Lord was teaching him and showing him in the ways in which the Lord was guiding him. So Chad, I love you, brother. We are so happy and proud of you, and it's such a great thing to know that LT knows you and Matt knows you. The Lord knows what he's doing, right, Chad?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there we go. Maybe we ought to have Chad on here. Chad, you want to come on here and tell us your story one of these days? He said 6 years ago.
6 years. Dang. That went by fast.
Sober James thought Chad was a troll.
Trolling.
Cobra says Chad is awesome indeed. You know Steve, right? He's watching. He says so powerful.
So Cobra 7, go back to Cobra 7, his remark. Sorry, LT. So Cobra 7 is my brother-in-law. He lives out in, I think it's Harriman. Is it, Jeff? I think it's Harriman. Jeff would be another awesome guy, LT, for you to have on the show. He has a really cool, awesome perspective on addiction, and so maybe one night you can have, and I'm not trying to tell you and your wife what to do, but
no, we're up for all suggestions.
Cobra 7, he's an awesome guy. He'd be a good person to have on your show.
Cool. Diana asked you a question. How do you go about getting speaking arrangements, especially in schools? Diana would be awesome for that.
So if you want to put this up on there, LT, so if you go to forthesolution.org,
okay, we'll put it in the comments.
Solution.org. What's that?
We're going to throw that in the comments.
Okay, sorry, LT. So forthesolution.org, you can go to that site, and there's a guy named Roger Leftwich. I believe he lives in North Ogden. I've teamed up with him. Chad's teamed up with him as well and went to some schools. But he's probably Utah's best connection to go speak at schools. He's well respected with the districts, and he's accepted. So I went with him numerous times, but he's a good guy to go to. And then right now, I'm teamed up with the network A&E. I'm not sure if you guys know who that is. Actually, you probably do. They're doing Addiction Unplugged. They ran those episodes, intervention. So I'm teamed up with the producer, Janie, on A&E, and her and I are going to do some things with the schools. And so, again, if you want to email me, I can give you more information on speaking at the schools and teaming up with some individuals that are already doing that.
Awesome. Dana says, yes, Chad's story is another amazing one. That first speaker meeting I ever went to, Chad was the speaker at it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was quite a story, man. And now we're a part of the same home group there on Friday nights at Action.
Yeah. So how many, I guess, I don't know if there's a way to let me know, LT, or a way to know who all is on this thread that went to Action. I know LT did. I know I did. I know Chad did.
We got Ashley in the or not Ashley. I just saw her name. Diana in the comments, and then Steve. I don't think he went through Action, but he's really involved with people in Action. Mandy's on here. Dawn is on here. So there's probably 5 or 6, but I only know who's watching by who comments.
Okay.
Everybody, if you guys can, throw in the comments Action, and we'll see how many Action folk we got up in here.
That'd be great.
I bet there's probably 5 or 6, and then. I love Action. You know what? I think I'm going to change my banner to Action just to
awesome.
Just to represent.
So LT, how much more time do we have?
We got all night. We don't have to end this at all. As long as people are interested in watching, we'll
awesome.
Until the last person goes off, I guess.
In regards to Action Recovery, you guys know Rick Visser.
Yeah,
Rick, the ones that know Action. So Rick Visser was my counselor at the ACT. At the time, Rick worked at ACT in 2006. So I want to talk just a little bit about, if it's okay, LT, talk about step 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I wrote my step 4, and LT's heard this, and Chad's heard this, and the folks at Action's heard it. But when I wrote my step 4, I bawled a lot, I cried a lot, and I wanted to use a lot, because that step 4 was drudging up a bunch of my past and a bunch of memories, a bunch of thoughts that I just as well wanted to keep in the closet. And so as I wrote my step 4, which I wrote it at my house in my kitchen, because I was at ACT from 12 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 o'clock at night. And so when I worked on my step 4, it was at our home in my kitchen. And I was advised to do that from Rick. Rick Visser advised me. He says, Dale, if you're having issues with your step 4 and you don't want to do step 4, do it at your house. Do it in your kitchen, at your kitchen table, and let your family watch you do it. And I asked Rick, I said, why would I want my family to watch me do step 4? And he said, well, maybe they need to see somewhat of the pain you're going through. They need to see you persevering. They need to see some of the hurt you're going through. And it's not that you're going to sit at the kitchen table and yell out to the family, hey, family, I'm doing my step 4. It's not that. It's that they're going to just be in the area. They're going to walk through the kitchen, and they're going to see you at the kitchen table. And so I did that. And my step 4 took me, first time I did it was probably, 4 or 5 days. And at the end of it, there was a big stack of my step 4. And I left out in my step 4 the one incident that happened to me when I was 7 years old, the abuse that happened to me. And why did I leave it out? I think it's obvious that, I was shameful of it. I didn't want that to be on paper. I didn't want to be the one writing it. I didn't want somebody else reading it. And I didn't want to confess it in a group setting with a bunch of other clients. When I say clients, a bunch of other addicts. I didn't want to do that. And so I left that out. And so in talking about Rick Visser, he's the owner, operator, I think still at Action Recovery. But back in 2006, I gave him my stack of papers at ACT, and I was proud of it. I completed my step 4, and my chest was somewhat puffed up, and I was ready to move on. And so Rick was at ACT, and I walked up to him and I handed him my big 30-page stack of step 4, and as Rick took it from me, he kind of held on to some of it. Maybe he took all of them, but nonetheless, as Rick took it, he kind of went like this, and he's kind of like, this is kind of light, Dale. You left something out, didn't you? And I'm like, no. Why would you ask that? He says, I think you did. This is light. There's something else you need to put in here. So he gave it back to me. Rick gave it back to me, all those papers. And he said, throw this away and start over. And I was pretty ticked off. Oh, so anyway, I went back home, and I got back, at the kitchen table for another 4 or 5 days, whatever it was. And I put that in there. I put that abuse in there. And when I got back to, when I was finished, I gave those papers back to Rick. And he did the same thing. He kind of went like this, and he goes, wow, that's heavier. That's a lot heavier, Dale. Good job. I'm glad that you put that one last thing in there. And you know what, guys? Rick had no idea. He was a stranger to me. I just barely knew the guy. But he had so much wisdom and so much guidance from his higher power that he knew that I didn't put that in there. And I guess, why I'm sharing this about step 4 is, for a lot of people, step 4 is hard. Step 4 causes us to not want to put some things in there that we need to put in there. And it's very evident when we do put those things in there, because we become cleansed of them and we don't get to own them anymore. And a lot of those things it's not healthy to own those things. And so I think the evidence of somebody doing a thorough step 4 is exactly what we're doing here tonight. Yeah. LT and his wife are putting this on for us. And I know LT's helped hundreds and hundreds of people over the many days, 29 days, LT. This is the 29th.
This is 27.
27 days. That to me that's evidence of a thorough step 4. Good on you, LT.
Thank you. Veronica has a question for you.
Okay. How are you feeling today? Does it keep getting easier, Dale? Recovery. My story is so much like yours. I'm a chronic relapser, but sober since 3/18. It's so hard every day. So how am I feeling today? You know what? Waking up this morning, I kind of felt a little bit scared to be here tonight, to be talking, like I am to you guys. So I felt scared about that. Does it keep getting easier? I think it does. What's that?
Let me back up just a second. Veronica's on like day 22 or 23 of sobriety. So she's a newcomer basically.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So sober since 3/18. So yeah, you've got a road ahead of you. And I would say to you, okay, so I'm going to assume maybe you have some kids, you have some parents, or maybe you have a husband, or maybe you have some friends. I think for the first couple weeks or months, or for some people years, we probably truly need to rely on some other people as parts of that foundation that builds our sobriety and our recovery. Because simply, to be honest and frank, a lot of people in recovery with a short amount of sobriety, we don't love ourselves enough to abstain from drugs and alcohol because of ourselves. And so we need to have some peripheral reasons as to why we want to keep that sobriety and that recovery. So I would give you the advice and say that, cleave unto those that love you and that have hope for you and that want you to succeed in this, and you will. And be honest with yourself. Don't be your worst enemy. Get out of your own way and don't be idle. Don't be idle. Don't sit in a room for too much amount of time by yourself. Get out, walk around, just get out and be a part of the world.
Get that, Veronica? See, now the echo goes away, so it's something to do with our connection. I don't know. I know you can't probably hear it, Dale, but soon when I flip the screens back and forth, I think it starts to catch up that just because the bandwidth right now is so chewed up, okay. Everybody's online right now is streaming and live streaming. Sometimes there's technical difficulties we just can't fix. And sometimes I start talking and it just echoes and echoes and echoes, but we'll get through it. Just,
Yeah.
Lord, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Nice.
So yeah, Veronica, she's been with us since the day she got sober, and we're watching her grow. She's always in the comments, and it's awesome.
So Veronica, I have a question for you. Is that okay, LT?
Absolutely.
So Veronica, my question to you is, what is sustaining these days that you have? How have you been able to sustain these days of sobriety that you have?
It takes about 20 seconds for the loop.
Yeah.
The delay.
Okay. So I guess the reason I'm asking that is I am such a firm believer in the fact that that our sobriety and our recovery, and I'll ask you guys this question and answer it to yourselves in a couple seconds before I give my answer. So what is your sobriety contingent upon? What is your sobriety contingent upon?
What do you mean contingent upon? Like, what are we hanging on to for our sobriety? Like, what is our why kind of a thing? Or what do you mean? Go a little deeper with that.
Yeah, so this is going to maintain this, and the success of this is contingent upon, and then fill in the gap. So the answer to the question, at least for Dale, is, so I told myself many years ago, I says, Dale, your recovery is contingent upon nothing. Your recovery is contingent upon nothing. And the reason I said that to myself is because early on I observed the world. I observed these addicts in recovery, and in a lot of the AA groups, a lot of the NA groups, I got to observe a lot of them say, I relapsed last night or last week because my wife was this, or the IRS called and said I had to pay this, or the Walmart clerk was frowning at me, or there's just a bunch of reasons. And so me observing this, I wanted to stop myself before I got to one of those reasons. And so I simply said to myself, my recovery is contingent upon nothing. And because it is, there's nothing that's going to have potential to cause me to relapse except Dale. And because Dale made that choice all those years ago to abstain from drugs and alcohol, then it's like a fail-safe plan for Dale. I mean, to be honest with you, that's kind of how I look at it. So that's why I was asking that question, Veronica.
Yeah, she hasn't wrote back yet. Oh, see, there's the echo again.
So Sober James says, great question, Dale. Key. Thanks. That's cool. I think it is key that we ask ourselves that. What is our sobriety contingent upon? And I think the soonest that we can answer that question for ourselves, we've taken away a huge part of the problem, because a lot of us in recovery, we don't even know what that is. We're just kind of floating on the winds of the world, and we sometimes let the world dictate if we're going to end this day with sobriety. And we have that ability within us to say, I'm in charge of that, not you.
Amen. Look at Sober James's comment to you. This is for Link right here. Link knows Captain Anonymous very well.
Nice. How are you doing, Link?
Captain Anonymous is down in his planet working on stuff.
He said, how you doing?
Doing good.
Link, I have a question for you. Link, I have a question for you, buddy.
Yeah.
So, Link, if you could talk to all of the individuals suffering with drugs and alcohol, if you could have 1 or 2 minutes to tell all of those individuals who are suffering from addictions and causing hate and discontent with their families, what would you say to them, Link?
I'd probably say, love your families instead of drugs.
Couldn't have been said better.
Thank you.
Link, that is awesome, buddy.
Thank you.
That's so true. I think, you know what, Link, that reminds me, back in 2006 at ACT, I was in the circle, in the group, and Rick Visser, going back to Rick, he was running the group, and I was new to the group my very first day there, and Rick was doing his little eye shuffle. You know how he does it. Those that know him, he does this eye shuffle, and he'll go around the room and he'll just pick on somebody and he'll call them out. And it's kind of like when you're in those chairs, you're kind of like sitting like this, like, don't look at me, don't look at me.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so in this group, I'm the new guy. And Rick says, Mr. Dale, tell us about yourself. And so anyway, Link, you reminded me of this. So Rick kind of heckled me and wanted me to talk and I got pissed at Rick, and I says, you know what, man, you don't know me, you don't know anything about me. How dare you tell me I'm an addict? How dare you tell me these things? And Rick looks at me and he says, Dale, you love your addiction more than your family, and the soonest that you can believe that and understand it, the better off you and your family is going to be. And I didn't believe Rick, but soon after I did, because my gosh, the things that I did in my addiction for my drugs and alcohol, I completely pushed my family aside. And that proves that I loved my addiction more than my family. So Link, good answer to that question. If we can love our families more than drugs and alcohol, we're so far ahead of where we were if we hadn't come to that conclusion.
Yeah. What was your response to him and the rest of that conversation with Rick?
My response was I got up. I think I shared this with you, LT. This might be why you're asking me. So I got up off my chair, and as I got up off the chair, I grabbed the leg of the chair and I flung it across the room, and the two of the legs of the chair stuck into the wall. And I went over to the door of the room, and I put my hand on the door. It was kind of the door that went down like this, and then you walk out. So I went over to the door, and I put it down, and I was ready to walk out. And Rick Visser, with his back towards me, he didn't even turn around and look at me. With his back towards me, he says, Dale, why don't you get your ass over in this chair and let's work on your addiction. Your family doesn't want you home right now. They don't want you there. You need to fix whatever it is that's going on inside of you. Why don't you be a man, come and sit in this chair and let's work this out. And with my hand still on the doorknob and with it down, I kept it there for a few seconds, and I thought about what he said, and I admitted to myself that he's right. He was true. He was honest, and he was telling me the truth. I loved my addiction more than my family, and so I put the handle back up, and I went back and got on my chair, and that's when the magic happened. It was pretty cool.
Well, I said unmanageable.
Yeah.
Well, I said become unmanageable.
Unmanageable. That's right, bud. Step one.
Yep.
Veronica has now responded. She said it's two responses, so I'll let you read through them.
Okay. I've stayed sober for me first, but then for my children. That's awesome, Veronica. You know, we need to help ourselves before we can help those around us and anybody else for that matter. So you've stayed sober for yourself. So awesome. Good for you. For your children, that's awesome. Good for you. Your children are deserving of having you with sobriety. There is so much about you, Veronica, that you probably don't know now. And as you continue down this road of sobriety, I promise you, your kids are going to show you things about yourself. And restitution, your kids are going to forgive you. They're going to get over the things that you might have done in your addiction to them or said things to them or whatever it was, but restitution is going to come into play. Your kids are going to forgive you. That's probably or could be an obstacle right now as to maybe some frequent relapses. I'm not sure, but restitution is going to be okay. Okay, so she goes on to say, I prayed for 2 years for my daughter, and I have missed so much of her short 3-year-old life. That's probably true, Veronica. That's definitely true. You know what? You're going to get that back. You're going to get that back in tenfold. It's so awesome and so wonderful how resilient kids are. How resilient kids are. You don't let that be an obstacle, and don't let that get you down. Please don't let that get you down. You're going to be fine. Just stay true to yourself, true to your kids, true to your sobriety. Keep coming back to this show every night at 8 o'clock, and you're going to be okay. And so let's see. I want to be a sober parent, a sober wife. Even though I'm married to an alcoholic, I pray he follows my lead. He's probably going to. And I pray for you, Veronica, to continue down this road of sobriety. You're going to be a sober wife. You just got to put in the work. Put in the work and put in the effort, and you're going to see your your rewards are going to be tenfold. Even though I'm married to an alcoholic, your husband can follow your lead. Set the example to him. Don't verbally be harsh on him. Just be yourself. Set that example. Show him by your actions. And then I pray he follows my lead. So you're praying to your higher power. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm happy that you're praying to your higher power. Keep doing that and keep paying it forward and get out of your own way and do tons of community work if you can. If you can speak, if you can tell your story. I'm a firm believer in us that are in recovery. When we have opportunities to share our story and to help other people, what that does is it completely crushes that addict that lives within us to a point where we've shown that we have some independence, because that addict that resides within us with all those character defects, that addict doesn't want me helping ourselves, and most definitely doesn't want us helping anybody else. And that can be the catapult that's going to get you to much better places, Veronica. So keep going. I'm happy for you, and I'll pray for you. Keep going.
Steve, crap. See, every time I switch the camera, oh well, I'm just going to talk without worrying about it. So Steve he came on the show. I think he's episode 20. He's here locally. His name's Steve Vell, and he has a question for you about the higher power in God, because he was an LDS missionary as well. And if you ever wanted to connect with him privately, you could. But I think I'll let you read through that, and then he has another response to that, if you would like to respond now, if you want to.
Okay.
Well.
Yes. Let me read this. So, Dale, I was an LDS missionary that was using in the mission field. I don't know if this is part of the reason I find it so difficult to connect with higher power, God. Would love to talk to you privately. So Steve, you know what? You're onto something there. That's definitely a profound question. And it's not that the Lord is keeping himself from you because you used on your mission. It's that you are getting in your own way. So the Lord doesn't work that way. He's always there for us. Whatever we've done, whatever things that we feel that are keeping us from him, he's not keeping the door shut. We've just got to exercise our faith and our hope and do those things that are gonna do those things that are gonna get us closer to him and build that much more clarity. And so, speaking of that, I served as a facilitator in an LDS ARP program for 4.5 years, and then my wife and I served a mission in the ARP program, which was phenomenal. And so, thank you for that question.
It's like God's not keeping the door shut, but we're just too afraid to walk through it.
Maybe so, Link. That may be so. So Bob Smith, do you want me to read that, LT?
Sure.
So Bob Smith is asking, I still want to know more about Dell fasting, tips on fasting and prayer, how to do it the right way. Is there a right way? So is there a right way to fast? Gosh, I don't know that I appreciate that question tons. I just think that, the best way for me to answer that is just my own personal experience. I know that I can feel 100% difference in my efforts and my story and my ability to connect with those around me if I fast before I go speak and if I pray before I go speak. Is there a right way to fast? I don't think so, because the Lord knows our heart. And if the world or somebody tells us we're doing it wrong, it doesn't mean that our heart changes. If we're doing it right, or if our intent is to do a good fast, then the Lord knows that. And so is there a right or wrong way to fast? I don't think so. I think the Lord knows our heart, and if we're fasting to our best ability, it's going to be appreciated and it's going to count to the fullest, brother. So continue on. Email me that question too. Let's talk more about that.
Yeah. So Danielle has a question. How can we follow? Do you have Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that they can follow you at?
No. Maybe you can help me with some of that, LT. All I have really is I have a YouTube channel. It's called Elevated Recovery. So I'll be starting a consulting firm where I can consult addicts in recovery. And so that's called Elevated Recovery. But you can email me, Danielle, addictionrecoveryspeaker@gmail.com.
And I'll help Dell get up to speed with all this technology stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. So Steve had an awesome quote that this is my Uncle Tim right here. He says, the depth of your honesty is the depth of your healing. And that's what Steve said in his testimony when he was on episode 20, I believe, and it stuck with my uncle. And then he says, "Thank you for your testimony."
That's great. That is so profound. That's awesome.
And they're astonished you're not on YouTube yet.
Yep, no. So I'm not on YouTube yet.
This is his debut, y'all.
Yeah, I can't believe I've been doing this 14 years and I don't have any of this stuff. Thank you, Dale. Awesome, Steve. Awesome. So, you know that quote that you put up there, Steve, before this, just that you put up there, was it your uncle, LT?
My uncle put it up, but it was Steve. This is Steve right here.
Okay.
He said it. My uncle was watching, and my uncle, I think, thinks about it multiple times a day. The depth of your honesty is the depth of your healing, which is true. We're as sick as our darkest secret, right? That
is so true. You know, that reminds me of that the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
It reminds me of it so profoundly. You know, when you get what you want in your struggle for self and the world makes you king for a day, just go to a mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The person whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. For he's with you clear to the end, and you passed your most dangerous test if the man in the glass is your friend. Some people might think you're a straight shooting chum and call you a wonderful guy, but the man in the glass says you're only a bum if you can't look him straight in the eye. You may fool the whole world on the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass. And awesome. So, guys, LT, I apologize for reciting that poem, but I try to live my day, each and every day, guys, to where when I end my day and go to the mirror and brush my teeth at the end of the day, I hope each day is such that I can go to that mirror and that little child inside of me that's still there looks at me and says, good job, Dale. Because we can put the facade on for the world. We can relapse yesterday and not mention it to anybody today. We can treat the world however we want and speak to people however we want. But at the end of any day when we go to a mirror, we're going to look at that person, and that person knows what we've done. And so anyway, I'm running off these tangents.
No, that's good, because 2 days ago I went through the importance and the roles of a sponsor. And I remember you quoting that when I watched you speak. So I read that poem a couple days ago. And it's cool that you quote it now from memory. Awesome. I had to read it.
Awesome, man.
So, yeah. Anything else? Or is this from you, Felice? You want to put there? Mm-hmm. This is from my wife.
Oh, okay. Can your wife be my sponsor? She sounds awesome. You know what? She would love to do that. She would love to do that.
I need a mentor. Can she be my mentor?
She would love to be your mentor. We'll have to exchange numbers, and I'll give you my wife's number and her email address. She's a pretty profound lady. She told me in the beginning, she just, like I shared with you guys, she just said, I don't care. You caused this. You did this. You fixed this. And it's not that she didn't love me. It's not that she wasn't compassionate. She just, you know, with my wife, I'm glad that you brought that up. My wife, I wish she was sitting right here next to me, but when I went into the rehab center, she had her high school diploma, and she didn't know if I was gonna do this. She didn't know if I was gonna to keep my recovery, my sobriety. So what she did was she put herself to school. She went to Weber State while I was at ACT because she had to count on a degree that she needed to get if I was gonna keep continuing to use. And so probably 2.5 years ago, she completed her master's degree, and she's now a registered dietitian for the University of Utah. And so it's so humbling and so special and beautiful that the Lord has helped my family, has helped us be where we're at today, because I get to witness the rewards of my wife's hard work. And so LT's wife, you're awesome. You know, it takes a lot for you to be doing what you're doing and to be teaming up with LT and doing this. I'm sure there's a lot of wives out there that would ask themselves, why is she doing this? But it's because your devotion and your compassion and your healing ability for LT and your family, and it's awesome.
Amen.
Yeah, I would like to get in touch with your wife, just to chat.
Awesome. Let's make that happen. Maybe the four of us can go to dinner and we can start from there.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome.
That would be great. Bob says he's really glad he showed up tonight, Dale. Thank you.
You bet, Bob. Hope you're having a good night, brother.
There you go.
Sober James, Dale, what's your position on the radio press films, part of the traditions? I guess I'm not understanding that question.
The traditions of AA, where it says they won't have any part of the affiliation, basically, with radio, press, and films because they don't want it to cause any conflicts or anything like that.
So what's my position on it? So I guess I didn't even know that was going on. And
let me look
so
up the
sorry.
traditions. I'll read it to you.
Okay.
Oh, spelled that totally wrong.
He's typing in Spanish.
Typing in Spanish.
Oh.
All right, so hold on. Almost there, looking it up.
Attraction.
The only
not
requirement for
promotion.
AA is to stop drinking. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affiliating other groups or AA as a whole. Each group has one primary purpose to carry the message. One group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility outside the enterprise, lest problems of money, property, prestige divert them from their primary purpose. Every AA group ought to be self-supporting. You know all these, right?
Yeah.
So that's what he's talking about. Our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. So his question's based on on those right there.
I don't think I know enough about any of that to give you an honest answer. I guess maybe an answer would be if I now this is Dale's opinion, Dale's answer for Dale.
Let me see if I can clarify a little more before you answer.
Okay.
I feel where he's coming from and where you haven't really put yourself out there in the public view like Sober James and I have. So Sober James, he's been doing this for a good year or more longer than me.
Okay.
And we, both of us, truly believe in the 12 steps of AA, all the literature of AA. So everything we bring to the table when we have our live shows or we produce videos is based on AA. And we're always reciting it and always quoting it. We're reading out of the daily reflections just because we know that it's a program that works if you work it. And throwing it out here to YouTube, how do you feel about, the what does it say? We need to always maintain our personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. That's 11. I have my opinion on it, but I'll let you explain yours.
So I think that if there's something out there that has the ability and has potential to help people, and that vehicle is sanctioned, or that vehicle being AA is sanctioned under AA guidelines, or AA has requested or advised or anonymity, I think that the very moment we let those things get in the way of our ability and our desire to help somebody is the day that probably isn't going to be a good day. And I don't know if that's answering your question or if that's not giving a direct answer, but this is kind of where I feel about it. So sorry.
This is what I feel about it. So that was copyrighted back in 1952, revised in 53, and then again in 81. And what was the technology like in 81? And if we were to obey this 11th tradition, that means I shouldn't get on here. I should stay anonymous and be attractive in the community that surrounds me. But now we can't even socially gather. Yeah. So I think certain things, and just like in everything, ought to change with the times. And the way technology is right now, that I don't believe that this is something that is a complete infringement. It's not like we're out here trying to make money off of their name. We just use their principles and live to what they have stated and make it clear that we have no affiliation with them as an entity.
That's good, LT. I like that.
So that's where I am on that. She says it's about promoting AA, and I promote it. And I tell you, my promotion is to, I'm going to say it just like Sober James, don't drink, go to meetings. So Bob says, my daughter, the meth addict, speakers were turned up loud enough, got her to hear most of your story and comments. She was cooking nearby. So the backstory to Bob, he's been following our channel for a little while. and he's got addicts around him in his house. So when we come live and people talk, he cranks up the speakers so the other addicts in the house can hear. So
Oh, wow.
you're spreading the word to them too.
That's great, Bob. Good for you.
Yeah, AA is changing very fast with Zoom. I agree. I'll let you read that one.
I think he's asking, like, if you were on TV or in a paper, how much would you speak on AA or NA, and where do you think you have to draw the line before you're breaking tradition? So I have to be honest with you guys and say that in 14 years of speaking, I think I've been invited to speak at there was a huge, I think it was called a Northwestern AA conference or something like that. I was invited to go speak at. And then NA, I've never spoken at an NA. And so I hardly ever speak of AA and NA when I go speak. It's just always my story and people asking questions for whatever reason. And I don't think I've promoted myself that way or deliberately put myself in situations where I've not needed to talk about NA or AA. It's just in 14 years, my arena of where Dale's been has not been in AA or NA.
Gotcha. Here's some more from Bob.
We are with the last bastion of the true free speech, as clergy and mental health are now legally mandatory reporters, but the AA sponsor is not compelled to report on you, nor the meetings, however.
Oh, yeah. I think you could relate with that with your current job, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I remember in 2000, I don't know what it was, 2010, I started an AA meeting up at Hill Air Force Base, and it still runs today. I went through a lot of loopholes to get that up there, but it's that way, definitely. And it has potential to cause issues, I think, and feel.
So now we're Zoom. That confidentiality is compromised. It'll be important to return to RT groups, one-on-one with sponsors. What's an RT group? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Awesome, Dale. Well, this is a good meeting, huh?
Yeah, very enjoyable.
Yeah, I enjoy it too. Chad's back, by the way. He said.
Hey, Chad.
He said, I'm back.
He had to go put the babies to bed.
So that's my Uncle Dale. I heard your testimony and what God has done for you.
Thank you. God is definitely the vehicle that drives my everyday. I could say so much about God. Thank you. Sober James, I feel the same way, Dale, about the traditions. I didn't want to lead that way as to avoid influencing your answer. Yeah. I have a lot of out and left field opinions about a lot of things, and I've been told that a lot over the years. You're very inspiring, Dale. Thank you, Merck. I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate that tons. I needed to hear that, actually. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. Do you want to stick around with us as we end the show?
Sure.
Okay, so what we normally do is we usually go either read the daily reflections or the just for today.
Bob said RT is real
hold on,
time.
we got one here. Sometimes this happens too. Good evening. First day out of my first 30-day rehab. Thank you so much for hosting this. Awesome. Well, welcome, Ghost.
Awesome.
I hope you were able to hear all of what Dell said. If not, you can always go back and replay it. It'll always be in the archives. So welcome and keep coming back for sure. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And then if you guys want to help us out, share these videos with other people. If you know somebody that needs to hear Dell's testimony, shoot it out over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you think it needs to go. I was just listening. Thanks, Dell, for your story. Answers, experience, strength, and hope. Betsy says, hey, what's the link to up top? Trying to pull it up. Can't copy it. I'm not sure. What did you post on there?
Let's see. Oh, that's the Man in the Mirror poem.
Oh, the Mind in the Mirror.
Probably just.
Oh,
Google
great.
it.
Yeah, we posted that. All right, I'm going to read this real quick. April 11th.
Let me give a shout out to my mom real quick. I love you, Mom. Thank you for dinner.
Is she watching?
Yeah.
Awesome. So to see how erratic emotions victimized us often took a long time. We could perceive them quickly in others, but only slowly in ourselves. First of all, we had to admit that we had many of these defects, even though such disclosures were painful and humiliating. Where other people were concerned, we had to drop the word blame from our speech and thought. That's what Dell's getting at right there. When I did my 4th step following the Big Book guidelines, I noticed that my grudge list was filled with my prejudices and my blaming others for not being able to succeed and to live up to my potential. I also discovered I felt different because I was Black. As I continued to work the steps, I learned that I always had drunk to rid myself of those feelings. It was only when I sobered up and worked my inventory that I could no longer blame anymore. Hey man, that's exactly what you were getting at there, Dale.
Nice.
And I'll go back through some of these comments people got for you. Where is it? Right here. Sure appreciate you, Dale. I'm sure he fat fingered it. It's all good. You have made my day and elevated a lot of stress I'm going through right now. Corey's reaching out. Thank you, Dale.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, it goes by so fast. That was an hour and a half tonight, y'all. Great meeting, Dale. You're very inspirational. God bless you.
Thanks.
I already did share them. Awesome. Thank you, brother. Yeah, Merc was up late tonight. You kept some people on, too. Aaron says, wonderful meeting. Thank you, Dale, so much for sharing your story. Yep.
That's funny.
All right, we're going to say stay on the line, Dale. I'll end the broadcast and we'll talk after.
Okay.
We're going to say a serenity prayer.
Great.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Where's everybody going? Polly, where you been, Polly? Polly's he lives in New Jersey, but he's from Philadelphia. He says water and stuff like that. I saw it, bud. All right, you guys. That was a great show. I'm glad you were here. Share that if somebody you think needs it. And remember to stay strong, work your program, and remember, we recover better together.
Water.